Welcome back to my reboot of South Park, where the boys are actually friends and magic is a bitch. Today we're discussing the B-Team, more commonly known as Craig's Gang. My plan for this specific group of characters is that I want to slowly introduce them to the plot by giving them individual episodes. Like, for example, Tweak will probably get the Underpants Gnome episode to be introduced. And what I want to do with these characters is both use them as a tool to kind of show the world's perspective of the four main boys from an outsider's view, while also kind of making them allies / rivals. I haven't completely decided which one I'm gonna lean into more, but I like the idea of them being friends a little bit more better. The basic idea is that these guys don't start out being involved in all the weird stuff that the other boys are, but they eventually get involved in it just by virtue of being in contact with the other guys. But that doesn't mean that they aren't without their weirdness already. Craig over here already has his weird powers before he even starts messing with the other guys and their weirdness. I got this idea from another fic, but Craig has prophetic dreams. They don't happen too often and they're usually really vague, and since Craig is so literal, he usually doesn't realize what they mean. But basically, before every single weird thing happens, he gets them and just doesn't tell anyone, because again, he doesn't realize that they mean anything. He ends up learning to utilize them better in the future, but you know. So because of that, I wanted to incorporate more star motifs in his design, sort of like a prophetic wizard type thing. Oh, and I made him Peruvian too, because fuck you, that's why. I kind of did the same thing with Stan, where I gave him a darker skin tone too. Stan's half Colombian though. Again, because I said so. But besides all this, one detail that I want to really incorporate into his character is the idea that his dad is like actually kind of like dangerously homophobic. In this series, there's no skirting around the matter and making a joke out of it. Craig and Tweak are like actually fully gay. Like, that's the thing that they are. Which leads to some issues, both in their relationship and in general, because as I've said, Craig's dad is not very cash money. Which brings us to his boyfriend. First things first, I'm not sure if any of you have noticed this nugget of inconsistency, but all the main four boys are in winter gear, right? Coats, hats, scarves, the whole shebang. But for some reason, some of the characters, and like some of like even the more original characters, like Chef for example, aren't wearing winter clothes. Like ever. Butters is a good example of this. Jimmy and Timmy too, and Tweak. I do not know how that lad isn't cold in the original series when all he's wearing is a poorly done up button-up. So for the reboot, I gave him a coat that's open because he can't even manage to close up the buttons properly. Of course he's not going to even try with his coats. Tweak really does not change that much in this thing. I've kind of just added a few details, those details being that he has a lot of anxiety around the idea of Craig being ashamed of him in their relationship. He's canonically got Tourette's in this, which is what all his tics are from. The coffee kind of aggravates that. And he's got anxiety like Stan does. At first I was a little concerned about the idea that rewriting Stan the way I did made him too much like Tweet, but in all honesty I think it's okay. Because there are subtle differences in their anxiety, and I feel like that's important to represent. Next up is Clyde. Like many characters on South Park, Clyde's only purpose kind of seems to be the butt of jokes in a lot of circumstances. His only real personality traits that I can gather from the series itself are that he's a crybaby, and the quote-unquote second fattest kid next to Cartman. Which is not a personality trait, so really we've only got one of those. So the way I wanted to characterize Clyde is kind of the antithesis of Cartman in a way. Like, people usually portray him as the Cartman of the group, and I say no to that. So instead, he's really kind, really soft-spoken, kind of dumb, kind of clueless. Like, he's kind of the little brother of the group. But besides that, he's just really sweet and a man of few words. He's also on the rugby team, which does give him and Cartman a teensy bit of a connection. And I really wanted to mess around with what happens to his mom later in the series. Much like in the original series, Clyde's mom dies further down in the season. I haven't decided how it happens, but it probably has something to do with spooky shit. And I want to add a layer of angst to that because Clyde's mom, well, she wasn't really a good mom. Like, she'd constantly berate him for not getting good grades, body shame him, taught him to compare himself to his friends a lot. But despite all that, when she died, he was really, really sad about it. But he also had a lot of guilt to deal with about the fact that he was kind of relieved as well. I also do want to briefly mention his weight. I didn't mention it before, but Cartman is insecure about how he looks. But he doesn't let people know that, one, as a defense mechanism, and two, because he thinks that other fat people are attractive, he just can't seem to think that way about himself. And he understands the hypocrisy of it, but you know. Clyde's very similar in the sense that he only ever criticizes himself, but there is an instance after the possession fiasco where Clyde offhandedly asks Cartman how he managed to lose weight that time, and Cartman simply smirks and says, "Thanks, I was dying." To which Clyde becomes very apologetic and like, "Wait, what?" But yeah. Also, nuts to that only making Clyde slightly chubby bullshit. Let the boy be fat.
And now is as good a time as any to probably mention that Tweak is gonna be a witch. He's gonna specialize in, like, potion making and stuff.
And for Clyde, it would probably just be some kind of weapon like Stan. But I haven't fully figured it out yet. Anyways, now we're moving on to Token Black. Token is the baddest bitch in this series. He is entirely too cool for all of you. He is 100% part of the Girl Boss friend group that entirely consists of just him, Craig, and Bebe. All the members of Craig's gang are, like, aware of the weirdness of South Park in their own way. Clyde is, like, kind of oblivious to it. Tweak obsesses over it. Craig mostly doesn't care. And Jimmy actually runs a information blog about it. We'll get to that later. But Token's, like, the only one to, like, casually mention it in conversation. He usually sits in front of the main four boys on the bus, so he'll overhear them talking about failed plans or future plans or things like that, and he'll usually tease them about it. He was definitely more reluctant than probably anyone else in the group to start helping them, but the moment the rest of his friends started doing it, he was like, okay, this has gotta be something I do now, I guess. Once again, not entirely sure what his supernatural magic power thing would be. I like the idea of him learning a few bits of magic from Kyle, but he wouldn't be quite advanced of a wizard as him. But I think it might be fun to mess around with how his parents got wealthy, and maybe link it to South Park's weirdness itself, like maybe they were treasure hunters, and therefore have a lot of magical artifacts from around South Park. I'm not completely married to the idea, but it is an idea. But yeah, I just really like the idea of Token, like Kyle, being the only one who knows what he's doing and being responsible in any way, shape, or form. Someone's gotta look out for the idiots. Though I wouldn't call him quite the mom friend of the group. I think he'd be more like the dad. The mom friend of the group is 100% Jimmy. Though he's more like a chill, laid-back, funny, I know what I'm doing kind of mom. Whereas Token is over here going, these fucking kids. And now, Jimmy! I really don't have a lot to say about Jimmy. Jimmy's perfect. He's the funny smartass, as I've said before. He kind of runs like a conspiracy/news blog about all the weird stuff that happens. It's got a lot of followers, but most of them just think that he's telling stories. He doesn't mind. But yeah, the only thing else I really have to say about Jimmy is that for his magic, I was thinking something like the ability to momentarily stop time or maybe super speed, but I think the stopping time thing is cooler. Like, it ties in with his superhero persona, and also I just find it hilarious how he can just, like, freeze time and, like, do whatever the heck he wants. Besides all this, the only thing I can think to add is that Jimmy is, like, the ultimate wingman. Like, he's peering up behind Craig and Tweak going, just kiss already. He's watching Clyde fumble it and be nervous around Bebe and is like, just kiss already. Literally any of his friends show any interest in anyone at any time, and he and Cartman pop up out of the blue and go, "Just kiss already!" Now how about we just take the rest of this time to appreciate the awesome vest that I gave him, because it is truly my proudest work. Finally, we have someone that probably should have been at the beginning of this video rather than the end, or maybe even in the last section of the last video, but I digress. Next up, we've got Butters, and whoa, have I got a lot to say about Butters. First, I want to start off by saying that he's got that scar on his face from, like, the beginning of the series, and that cool thing going on with his eye isn't actually an injury. When he got the injury, he lost the entire eye, so that is a glass eye that Kenny gave him. He's not allowed to wear it outside of the house because his parents say that it's unsightly, so he just slips into the boys' bathroom at the beginning of each day and puts it in. So what about Butters? Well, Butters is mostly portrayed as Kenny's quiet, kind of wimpy friend at the first season. He, Kenny, and Cartman are kind of a trio. And Butters is kind of Cartman's only confidant during that really hard time between Kenny's exorcism and when he comes back. He's still kind of like the de facto fifth member of the group. And he's also a werewolf. Yeah, so when I was thinking about what I could possibly add to Butters to make him a more interesting character with supernatural abilities, I had a few things to go off. One is the scar, one is the groundings that he has a lot, and 3 is the fact that he was a vampire at one point in the series. And I hear you say, "Demi, what are you talking about? That has absolutely nothing to do with being a werewolf." And you're entirely right, I'm an idiot. But basically the vampire thing made me decide to make him some kind of supernatural entity. And then the scar combined with the groundings gave me an idea to make him a werewolf, because of the idea that he would have gotten really hurt during being a werewolf during one of his turnings. And there can be this running thing where Butters is always grounded at least once a month. So yeah, at the beginning only Kenny knows that he's a werewolf. But I imagine Cartman finding out at some point during his recovery from the exorcism, mostly because Kenny used to be the one that helped him with that.